welcome to Menu Talk with Pat and Bret. I'm your co-host, Bret Thorne, Senior Food and Beverage Editor of Nation's Restaurant News and Restaurant Hospitality.
And I'm Pat Kobe, Senior Editor with Restaurant Business. Welcome and Happy New Year again.
Yes, yeah, we're still in the first half of January. I think you can continue to wish people a happy
Yeah.
new. I think for all of January, pretty much. Although today we're recording this on Friday, and today I recently learned is Quitter's Day. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, I am. I've gotten a number of press releases about it.
Yeah, yeah. Apparently, this is the day when people, like 80% of people, give up on their New Year's resolutions. That they don't make it even 2 weeks in to the new year
Yeah.
before they quit. Which I don't know. I like to think that I have more confidence in people than that. But as we talked about last week, Pat, there really weren't that many resolution oriented new menu items
Mm.
this year. And maybe restaurants, I mean, restaurants know what their customers order, and maybe they figured out that, like, by the second week of January, there's not really much point. Although I am hearing people have been telling me that some of the better few items are going to be rolling out later this month. Maybe
Yeah.
in anticipation of general people wanting to eat more healthfully, maybe in anticipation of spring, that kind of thing. Maybe that has more.
Yeah. Last week I didn't see a lot, but this week I got a lot of, you know, pitches about bowls. And bowls, I guess a lot of people are on these high protein diets and they're putting a lot of protein in these bowls and not a lot of carbs. So I think that's where the push is right now on protein. And I even saw Snooze actually is putting protein in their pancakes. They're putting using this protein powder made from hemp in their pancakes. And I've seen coffees at Pete's with protein powder. So I think people are really into protein as a healthy option this year, more than, like low calorie or plant forward.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I saw some whey protein was being added to something to. I mean, honestly, unless you're like a power lifter or some similar like person who needs a lot of protein, most Americans get plenty of protein. But it definitely is a big trend and has been for quite a while. So obviously, if people want more protein, restaurants should give them more protein.
Yeah, well, it seems like they are. And I think it's, these weight loss drugs like the GLP-1 weight loss drugs really require you to eat more protein. So, and I see call outs on the menus now, this particular bowl has 39 grams of protein, which is really a lot because like the average person probably needs 40 to 50 a day.
It's not, you don't need to be mainlining whey protein all day long. Although, if people want to do that, obviously customers should, or restaurants should provide that.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of new indulgent stuff happening. Have you seen how much ranch dressing there is these days?
There's a lot of ranch out there.
There is. In fact, we went to an event a couple of days ago, a Wingstop event, where they introduced a new, I think, very on trend uh, glaze, a Pacific glaze, which
Mhm.
combines the flavors, as you know, because you were there, of gochujang and hoisin and Thai sweet chili. And, I thought it was a pretty robust, flavorful glaze. But then afterwards, they brought out ranch dressing and that glaze and hot sauce and some a lemon pepper rub and their hot honey rub and let us make our own doctored up ranch dressing, which was pretty fun. I actually ended up, uh, along with the guy across from me, we got their atomic sauce, their hottest sauce,
Mhm.
which is very habanero peppery, and it'll light you up. And we added that to the ranch dressing. Um, and we added more than the chef Larry would have wanted us to, I think. But then it really had some legitimate heat, and I've noticed that a lot of the new ranch dressings are spicy ranches, and some returning ones. For example,
Mhm.
Jimmy John's just made a big hullabaloo about bringing back the Kickin' Ranch that
Mhm.
it removed last year as part of its regular menu update, and received irritated responses from their customers. So they brought it back. And some of the social media responses said things like they like the Kickin' Ranch so much that they would eat it with a spoon. So, in response, Jimmy John's came up with a Kickin' Ranch soup. It's a 6 ounce
Right.
container of the Kickin' Ranch. So, if you want that, and that seems kind of outrageous, but in fact, Burger King last year, toward the end of last year, came out. It just tested it in a few markets, but it came out with an 8 ounce cup of ranch. So you can take your Whopper and dip the whole thing in
It's a
ranch.
lot of ranch.
Well, I was inspired by that to take the chicken sandwich that they coated in Pacific Glaze at Wingstop, and I dipped it in the ranch that they brought us. Yeah, it was pretty good.
Yeah, well, I remember last year Wingstop came out with this promotion. They said that their customers love their ranch so much, some people say they would take a bath in it. And so they did this whole thing with ranch scented bath soap and bathrobes that said Wingstop on it. So I think ranch, I mean, it's been around a long time, but it seems to really be coming out in new iterations and never going away. Sweet Green this week also came out with their version called Green Goddess Ranch. So it's like a ranch dressing, but with the Green Goddess herbal flavors in it. So,
Yeah, there really is a ton of ranch going on. Taco Bell came out with one for their new crispy chicken nuggets. It's
mhm.
also it's called Hidden Valley Fire Ranch sauce. And then a smaller chain, Fajita Pete's, just introduced a jalapeno ranch. And another little chain, Wings Etc., is testing what it's calling ranch fire sauce in certain communities in Missouri and South Carolina. So, and as they said at the Wingstop event, a lot of Wingstop customers like to doctor their own
Mm.
ranch dressing with other things, especially the atomic sauce. So that's why they had us do it.
Well,
Fun.
how did yours taste?
Good. By the once I added enough of the atomic sauce, I really liked it. It added that warm backbone. I remember, oh, it was had to be more than 10 years ago. Richard Blaze, celebrity chef, been in San Diego for a while, though originally from Atlanta. He had a sriracha ranch sauce that he called sriracha, which
Oh,
makes
he was
sense.
ahead of the times.
Yes. Even though he's a celebrity chef, he's also legitimate, and
Mhm.
had a reputation as a well-respected chef in his own right before he went on TV, which I think makes
Yeah.
a difference.
Well, I thought Wingstop's ranch was really good. They said they make it in house every day, and I've tasted a lot of ranch dressings in my time, but
Hmm.
I thought with the Pacific Glaze, which had a lot of, like it had the sweet heat, but it was much more complex than some of the sweet heat combinations we've been given lately. But that dipped in the ranch was a really nice combination.
Yeah, I agree with you because I certainly took my wings or my tenders or I don't know all the stuff they provided,
Yeah.
as well as the sandwich, and dipped it in the ranch. And yeah, it's certainly a tremendously popular uh, condiment, and we're probably going to see more of it.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It's not one of the healthier uh, condiments that you can have. It's very rich, high in fat, which I think more underscores my argument that people are not very good at resolutions. But you're right, there is a lot of protein out there.
Mhm.
What else have you been seeing?
Well, I've seen a lot of coffee. We saw a lot of coffee over the holidays with all the peppermint gingerbread ones coming out. But this week, I mentioned Pete's has this high protein coffee, which I
Yeah,
find kind
that's
of
the one with
interesting.
the whey protein
Yeah.
mixed in.
hmm
Yeah. Hmm.
But they're also doing a lot of functional coffees, where it's supposed to have antioxidants in it or, mood enhancers. So I've seen a bit of that. And we did hear that pistachio was the flavor of the year from a couple of trend forecasters. And I've seen more pistachio lattes recently. So I guess that's happening.
Yeah, yeah, I saw that too. Pistachio syrup being added to the cold foam that goes on top. Cold foam's also a thing that, when I wrote about it, I used to have to explain or feel like I needed to explain
Hmm.
what cold foam is. And now every coffee chain has it and puts it on their cold brew and their iced coffee. And it's usually aerated sweetened skim milk, although there are some variations. Um,
When Dutch Bros is doing coffees with cereal milk flavors, which is kind of interesting. Something
yeah,
that, Christina Tosi made popular with her dessert bars, but I think, this is the first time I've seen it in a large coffee chain. So that was kind of cool.
yeah,
I
that
don't
is.
know what it tastes like, but
Yeah, I personally am not a cereal milk person, but it doesn't matter what I like. It matters what the average consumer likes. And that's what obviously what restaurants have to listen to. Although, audience, if you listen to me and Pat, I think you'll get some good insights too. I'm just saying, a little arrogantly maybe. And I also love for you guys to listen to the interview that I did with Yara Herrera, who is the chef and partner of Hellbender, which is a Mexican American restaurant in the Queens neighborhood of Ridgewood. You grew up near there, right, Pat?
I grew up in Queens, not in Ridgewood, but not too far away.
And it opened as a cocktail bar with some food. And then they found out in their neighborhood, actually, the place wanted a Mexican restaurant. So
Oh,
they're doing that. I mean, it's Mexican American. Yara herself is from Los Angeles, Mexican American, and it brings her own personality, like all chefs do these days, to the food. And she had some very interesting insights about her strategies for using local ingredients, but also importing things like heirloom corn from Mexico. And she also discussed the sort of changing dynamic in professional kitchens. Uh, Obviously, she's a woman and she's a Mexican American woman, and she said 10 years ago it was more of a struggle to establish yourself uh, when you're a woman. And she said these days it's not really that much the case anymore. That I mean, especially in New York City, everybody is from everywhere and does everything, and they're not particularly interested in your background or your gender. They just want to know if you have game. And so I think uh, everyone will enjoy this interview. It's
yeah, it sounds, I mean, that's really good news. So a nice positive spin on our first interview.
Yes, and there are some very interesting dishes that she talks about. She does sort of her version of a mozzarella stick using Oaxaca cheese, and she does some cool things with steak. And she also does rotating specials of different kinds of jellos, uh,
Mm,
including peanut butter and jelly jello that she walks us
interesting.
through. And here she is right now. You are the chef of Hellbender in Queens, right?
I am, yes. Chef, executive chef, and partner.
Cool. And tell me and everybody else about Hellbender.
We are a Mexican American restaurant located in Ridgewood. We opened about 10 months ago now, so almost a year. We've been through a transitional period the last year. When we first opened, we started out as a cocktail bar with a small menu. And during this time, the last 8 months, we've developed the menu. It's grown a lot. It's a really big emphasis on heirloom corn and trying to find more ways to source ingredients directly from Mexico and find ways to kind of give that money back and count the middlemen out. a lot of very playful dishes. Nothing is 100% traditionally Mexican, but definitely inspired by, and a lot of emphasis on the technique as well.
I mean, Mexican food, like any food, evolves. And you are a Mexican American from Los Angeles,
Hmm.
serving Mexican American food in Ridgewood, Queens. So you're allowed, I think, to evolve the cuisine as part of the cultural dialogue of Mexican cuisine.
Yeah, thank you. I do feel like I have a big responsibility with that connection for sure.
Like, are there guardrails about what you can do or what you can't do, or are you, as the chef, able to kind of do what you want?
Yeah, I feel like I can do pretty much whatever I want as long as I feel like the final product is something I'm proud of, it's delicious, it's gonna, get the point across, maybe not change somebody's life, but make someone walk away feeling happy.
Well, that's cool. And so, why did you guys decide to go from like a bar with food to a restaurant
Yeah,
with, I
honestly,
assume, a robust cocktail program?
it's a great question, and it is asked a lot recently. And it's honestly part of growth. And I think for any business owner of any type, when you first seek out to open your first concept, you have all these ideas in your brain, and you're like, this is going to be the best place ever. And again, this is all things that you're thinking inside your head before you actually put them out there. And I think just based on experience, what we think the neighborhood wanted to see a little bit more, what we felt was attracting people more, how people interacted in the space, I think all of that kind of led us to move forward to a restaurant. We were selling a lot more food than cocktails. And then without getting too much into the logistics, there's just so many permits that are so different from a bar to a restaurant, that it felt like for us the best decision was to just make that hard transition into a restaurant and just focus on what we were selling the most of and what people were asking for the most. And it was food, which is great. As a chef, that makes me really happy.
Totally. Although I assume you're involved with the cocktails too, as one of the owners.
Yeah, I definitely get to taste them all, which is great. But yeah, I'm not super focused on that program itself because there's just so much going on in the kitchen, and you have to figure out to like how to delegate and how to just like let go of some things and not be like a total control freak. But definitely, if there's any idea that I have, or if there's something that I really want to see, or maybe there's a dish that I think would pair great with something I'm familiar with, I go to my general manager, who's also our beverage director, and we kind of collaborate on that. But yeah, I try to stay in my lane as much as possible.
And this is your first time being a boss, right? And you've worked
It
with like
is.
large personalities like David Chang and Wolfgang Puck, right?
Yeah, 100%. This is my first time, and I'd be lying to you if I said I wasn't scared most of the time. I'm easing into it now, and my demeanor for the most part, is calm, cool, and collected. But it's scary to be that person that has to make those tough decisions sometimes and have those very difficult conversations through literally every aspect of anything, from plateware to the bathroom sink being broken to the light bulb outside. A lot of things that when you're a chef, or when you are working towards becoming a chef, you don't really realize until you're put in the position of having to make those decisions.
And of course, chef means boss. So in
Yeah.
French, so.
Yeah, it's some days I wake up and I'm like, wow, I'm the one that has to do that. You can't just like throw it off to somebody else.
Is that fun or does it stink sometimes or both?
It's a little bit both, I'd be lying if I said that there aren't those tough days where maybe I'm not feeling my best, but I am technically the coach of the team, and I try to like think about it that way, like the team needs to be led, and no, it's nobody else's responsibility but mine to do it. Of course, I do have partners who are also chefs who, if it is an emergency, of course, they're gonna come and help out. But it is tough some days to just rally up and show up and be there and have the attitude. And at the end of the day, it's my business, right? So I can't expect everybody else to do that just for me if I'm not doing it. You have to like lead by example and hold yourself to those high standards daily and hope that your team respects and follows through as well.
And I assume you have cooks working for you. Are they mostly Hispanic also, or is it a mix?
They are. We have a handful of Hispanic. We have a really small team, so I want to say about a third is Hispanic. But not necessarily. I think it's part of the beautiful thing of living in a place like New York, where it's just kind of like a giant pool of different cultures and races, ethnicities, that all kind of have something to bring to the table. And it's part of the Mexican American concept where we are recreating things that we appreciate from a certain culture, but we all kind of get to put our own input into it. So it's really nice.
That sounds nice. And is your approach kind of collaborative in that way, getting input from all the cooks and stuff?
I try to express myself in that way. I'm more than open to always hearing people out. I think it's one thing that I've learned from the strong personalities that I've worked for. I don't want someone to be afraid to come to me with a certain idea. Of course, I'm not going to, sit there and do everything, my cook that has been working in the kitchen has said. But it's nice and people appreciate to be heard.
Right. Oh, definitely. Well, and you're also a woman chef and a Hispanic woman chef. Does that,
Yeah.
I mean, I hate being like, oh, what's it like being a woman and a chef? Whatever. But, there are stereotypes about chefs and Mexican culture,
Yeah,
Hispanic generally, but for sure Mexican culture about women in leadership roles.
of course.
And is that a factor?
I think it's something that maybe 10 years ago I struggled with when I first got into cooking, where you didn't see that many women in the kitchen, especially not as a leader, especially in a world where we were living in where the majority of leaders were like, white French men or something like that. Like French was like the dominant cuisine. Mexican wasn't even like under the category of something you would like study or look up to for anything like that. But, the last couple of years, I feel like our industry has changed a lot. And I think also part of, growing up and finding that confidence in yourself and being okay with who you are and what you're doing is also a big part of it. Finding your voice and finding the things that you find important and feeling comfortable with putting them out there and standing up for them.
Great. And as you said, there's a more open-mindedness now in restaurants. And I think certainly in New York City, I mean, you're in Queens where everybody lives,
Yeah,
tons of different kinds of people.
100%. I definitely feel comfortable. I can't say that I felt like that when I first started working, and maybe it's part of being the boss. But I'm very happy where I am now, for sure.
Wonderful. So now let's talk about the food at Hellbender. What are some dishes that people really like or that you're really proud of or whatever?
One of our most popular dishes is the fried Oaxacan cheese. It's one of the dishes that we've started out with when we were still in the bar concept and has remained on the menu and is one of the most popularly ordered items. But we pretty much take an already made giant ball of Oaxacan cheese that's kind of wrapped up in like a kind of needle and thread ball, crochet ball, you can say. And we naturally just unravel it and we clip. If you unravel it, it just turns into a long, long, long piece of cheese, just like a giant yard-long cheese stick. But we cut those into about 2-inch pieces. We toss them in cornstarch, eggs, and then bread them in a cornflakes, like crunchy crust. They're then deep fried and served with a green marinara sauce, which is really like a tomatillo salsa with some extra oregano in it. So I think that's like a very good representation of using Mexican ingredients, applying like a classic breading technique, and serving it in an American way of like a mozzarella cheese stick, but finding ways to tie in, the Mexican culture and technique of it.
That's cool. What?
Yeah, it's fun. It's also like for all ages. Like kids love cheese sticks.
Yeah, and everybody loves dipping their food and eating something crunchy.
Of
Like,
course.
absolutely,
Crunchy is satisfying.
totally. And yeah, it's something anyone can wrap their head around. It's like a mozzarella stick, but it's a Oaxaca stick.
Right. Yeah, it's a Oaxacan stick.
What are some other dishes that you're into or that your guests are into?
Yeah, of course. We have a really awesome steak dish. So it is a New York strip steak that we pan sear here and butter basted, very classic cooking technique. But we finish it with a little bit of ancho chili butter. So ancho is a dried poblano, usually smoked underground. Those come from Mexico. Kind of make it into a powder, throw it on top with some butter, and that's kind of served as a large format item with a side of tortillas and salsa, onions, and cilantro. It's kind of like a make your own taco plate
Oh, it's steak.
for anyone looking for like a bigger dish, and it's easy to share with multiple people. Yeah. And as far as dessert, we do kind of pride ourselves in our jello of the day, which sounds a little silly, but jello and different types of jellos, I think, is something that I grew up very familiar with growing up in America in my Mexican household. It was like a birthday cake and like a jello every year. And I think any little kid can really resonate with the thought of having a jello in your lunchbox at school or anything like that. So we kind of took that idea, and every couple of days we come up with a new flavor, sometimes seasonal, sometimes with whatever we have, but it changes constantly. And we do have a lot of guests that are regulars that come back and get excited about like what the new flavor is. So that's just a really fun way to kind of have some fun at work.
Yes, I now remember that in restaurant hospitality we reported on your peanut butter and jelly jello.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
that's been one of the most popular flavors for sure, the peanut butter and jelly one, which I think hits those points of there's something very satisfying about somebody eating something that you kind of grew up with or remember. And a peanut butter and jelly is just one of those classic things that I think everyone can kind of like get a bite of and be like, I know exactly what that is. It's a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So to be able to do that in a jello is really fun.
yeah, it's like getting a hug in your mouth.
Yeah, I think a lot of people ordered it just out of curiosity to be like, wow, I wonder if this actually is going to taste like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
And I hope it does because it
It
better.
does. Yeah, no, it does. I think so. I was surprised.
How do you make it?
So we were taking Concord grapes and juicing those, and we set the jello itself was 2 layers. So the first top main layer was the Concord grape juice that was set with gelatin, and the second layer was an evaporated milk blended with peanut butter, and that was set with gelatin. So it was like a 2 layer, a dollop of whipped cream, and then candied crushed peanuts on top.
Mm.
Yeah.
So quite Mexican in some ways, like with the evaporated milk.
Yeah, exactly. With the
Crushed peanut.
silky evaporated milk that you find a lot in flan. Peanuts are obviously a very big legume in Mexico. So yeah,
That's awesome. And Concord grapes are a New York thing.
yeah,
So
a
that's
New
fun.
York and seasonal thing for sure. They were very easy. They were peak season during the time that we were able to acquire them. I believe they came from Norwich Farms, which is a local farm here. Yeah, so they were just the perfect ingredient to use.
And you also, as you said, you import heirloom corn from Mexico and stuff. Um,
Yeah.
how do you go about finding stuff from Mexico to import?
So I work very closely with a restaurant and tortilleria. named Sobremasa. They're local in Bushwick, and they are the ones that have the direct connection to a company called Tamoa. Tamoa is based out of Mexico, and they pretty much travel through to different farms and different families sourcing corn that is of heirloom varietal to that area where they're visiting. So let's say we're in Oaxaca, we reach out to a family who owns a corn crop and we pay them, in a fair trade amount, how much corn is worth here, buy all that corn from them. They have it in a giant warehouse, and then they send out a log to people all over the world, showcasing the different varietals where you can reach out and purchase it directly. Purchasing the corn isn't as expensive as importing the corn into America, which costs as much, if not more, than the corn itself. So Sobremasa buys very big amounts of it. They have a giant warehouse here in Bushwick where they keep it at, and they nixtamalize corn daily and sell different corn products that way. So masa, tortillas, totopos, which are what you use to fry chips, and along with corn, they have other Mexican ingredients like heirloom beans, different chilies, cacao, and coffee beans, which is great. So a lot of our ingredients are sourced through them or people related that we've met through them.
Cool. So, and how do you convey that information to your guests? Like, is it on the menu or in some sort of, I don't know, mission statement or?
It is part of our mission statement. It's a little hard to find that balance between how much information a guest really wants to receive and how not. However, it is something that I think we as an establishment refuse to compromise on. There is a certain price for certain things because we feel like that is the price that someone should pay for what you're receiving. So if that question ever comes up, like, why is this, tortilla $2 more than one I can buy down the street? Then that's when kind of the explanation would come in. Or, there's guests that generally do show interest in, hey, where did you get this? Like, oh, I've never seen this before. But we try to just, at the end of the day, remember that some people are just here for a meal, and sometimes you just need to let them have that. But anytime the conversation arises and someone's more interested, we're all more than happy to kind of jump in and highlight that. And there are little clues in the menu that kind of give that away. But again, it's all kind of taking a step back and taking a moment to realize, all right, is this person here for dinner or a history lesson? And what's gonna give the best outcome of their experience at the end of the day.
Yeah, I'm sure plenty of people come in for margaritas and cheese sticks. And
yes, exactly.
They don't need to hear the other stuff.
Yeah, you can't be mad about it, know?
So what you said, there are little clues on the menu. How do you?
We have, it'll mention ayocote heirloom bean salad, or it'll mention, the area of Mexico very shortly. And sometimes people do ask oh, where is this? Or where did you get this from? I've never heard of this bean, which is nice. And it gets us excited as well to see people find interest in that.
And I'm sure plenty of people also, just take out their phones and look it up. They don't have to ask.
Yeah, 100%. It's also, you can't expect everyone to have that personality where everyone's just ready to ask a question. There's obviously all types of different people, and sometimes just Googling it is easy. But even if you Google it, that's already the direction that we want you to go in. So I'm more than happy if that's happening.
Totally. So we're now in the depths of winter. What do you have planned coming up in the next few months or whatever?
Yeah, so we are leading up into brunch. As our 1 year mark, we're going to kind of soft launch brunch, which is in the restaurant world just one of the scariest things that you can do. The B word, we call it. Brunch is a monster. So this week, actually, I've just been working really hard to staff up a little bit, get people trained so that in February we can step into launching a brunch menu. Luckily, I feel like a lot of the items that we have on our menu now translate very easily into a brunch situation. So we will be keeping a few items that we think work well as like just an all day thing, as well as like adding a few things that are just more expected in a brunch menu, like pancakes and eggs, you know. So we're really excited for that and to also just expand the team. Like I said, it's a pretty small team, and it's always nice to bring new energy in.
And so what do you find the most daunting aspect of doing brunch? Just like a lot of volume in like 2 hours?
Yeah, I think we're just open for a very long time. So having to kind of wrap your head around two services on a Saturday where you know it's just going to be like mayhem, busy, um, is a little bit stressful because now you're responsible for making sure that one part of the day is done and then rolling over into a second part. And when you're a manager, let's say there's a call out, multiple sick people, something like that, it's really up to you to either find coverage or be the person that steps in to cover that position. So I think that's where it gets a little rocky there.
Sounds like you've worked brunches in the past.
I have. Maybe that's why I'm scared.
But they could, I mean, guests love them and they can be highly profitable.
Yeah, they do. It's a different crowd, you know. People are more on like a time crunch. People want to come in and get out. They want to get their day started. Maybe it's the first cup of coffee they had in the day. So you just have to be patient and ready for a little bit of everything.
Awesome. Well, Yara Herrera, my impression is that you're ready and that
Thank you.
we can be able to launch.
I'm gonna take that in for sure. I'll remember that next month.
I'm manifesting success for you. And that'll do it for this week. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Menu Talk. Like and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Bret Thorne.
And I'm Pat Copey. Have a great week and see you next week.